It's 1944, the Second World War is about to end, but the countries at war don't know it yet. However, they realize that the situation is nearing a conclusion and decide to call a conference to try to establish a new world order. They are aware that in 1919, serious mistakes were made, as we saw in the previous episode, and they don't want to repeat those same mistakes. There needs to be a conference that involves pretty much all the countries in the world, or at least the Allied countries, and that gives the world a new order. The initiative comes from the United States of America. And at first they decide to involve only the other two major powers, the United Kingdom and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, so a telegram is sent out to them. It's April 5th, 1944 at 10 p.m. when a telegram is sent from the United States Secretary of State to the American ambassador in the United Kingdom. The telegram reads, "The President wants to call a United Nations conference to establish an international monetary fund and a bank for reconstruction and development. The ambassador is tasked with testing the waters." On April 12, 1944, the ambassador replies in these terms, "Keynes supports the program, and I came to the conclusion that there would be strong opposition. The Bank of England is against the program. The ambassador has tested the waters. The hostility mainly comes from the fact that England doesn't want to lose its role as a major world power. And they know very well that if a conference is called in the United States of America, the political and financial control of the world could shift there. Keynes, however, is in favor. And this gives some hope to those who are organizing the conference. Keynes was the one who had pointed out the mistakes of 1919. If he's in favor of this conference, there must be something good behind it, and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. How do they respond? On April 20th, 1944, the response from the American ambassador to the Soviet Union arrives, and it's in the following tone. "Molotov told me our financial experts disagree on the organization of the International Monetary Fund. However, if the voice of the USSR is needed to ensure the proper effect for the other countries, the Soviet government will join the project." So, even the Soviet Union has its doubts, but they're only technical and organizational, definitely not political doubts. From a political point of view, the USSR is present and wants to show the whole world that the Allies are united against the Nazi fascist forces. So, the final telegram is now sent. It's May 25th, 1944. A message is sent from the United States Department of State to all embassies around the world. The message reads as follows. The U.S. President proposes to convene a conference of the United Nations and the Allies. The delegates should not be plenipotentiary. This is a guarantee because the countries involved are worried. They don't want to send a diplomat who might sign something that their governments would later find unacceptable. The President of the United States guarantees that there will be no plenipotentiaries. Everything decided at this conference will then have to be ratified by the concerned governments and parliaments. So the conference begins. It's July 1st, 1944. 44 countries are taking part in this conference. Basically, all the countries in the world that are concerned. Only 4 are left out. They're the countries fighting on the side of the Nazi fascists, Italy, Germany, and Japan. Also Spain, which, even though it isn't taking part in the war, is already under Francisco Franco's control. Opening the conference will be Lord John Maynard Keynes. And Keynes believes that they are there as delegates of the 44 Allied countries to give the world a new order after the Second World War. An order based on international growth and credit. Keynes will never use the word debt in his speeches. He will always use the word credit. We need to give credit to the countries of the world so that they can finally grow, after so many years of shrinking economic resources. At this point, the 44 countries come to an agreement and work together for an entire month until they manage to draft a final act, which is presented on July 22nd at the closing of the conference. The Secretary of the Treasury, Morgan Tao, chairs this final meeting of the representatives of the free world, and he decides to give the floor to the main countries that contributed to these agreements. In the graph, we can see them by order of speech. The first to speak will be Lord John Maynard Keynes himself. When Keynes stands up to speak, as recorded in the minutes, all the other delegates rise as well and give him an ovation. Everyone is aware that Keynes had been right 25 years earlier, and that this time he has helped give the world an order that will likely be more lasting. Keynes delivers the following speech: "We have tried to be economists, financiers, politicians, journalists, propagandists, lawyers, statesmen, and even prophets and fortune-tellers. I am certain that no conference in living memory has ever achieved such a monument of clear and solid construction." Keynes is pleased with what has been accomplished and knows that the order given to the world will likely be stable and probably good. Even though there will be problems, they will surely come to light, but only later. For now, the work is extremely satisfying, and the other delegates share views very similar to those of Keynes. They are all aware that the work has been done well. Now let's hear from the representative of the Soviet Union. The peoples of liberated countries will remember the efforts of the United Nations that led to the maintenance of peace and security after the war. They know they are creating a world order for what comes next. They are working for the future. That's why Keynes said that we have also been a bit like prophets and fortune-tellers. As for France, they are aware of the mistakes made by the French Prime Minister Georges Clemenceau 25 years earlier, and they actually admit them in the final report. Mons France will write, "France will strive to achieve its rehabilitation by developing its solidarity and cooperation with other nations." Rehabilitation from what? From the mistakes made 25 years earlier. Mistakes that must not be repeated, because here 44 peoples have brought together their ideas and their differences. This is emphasized by another representative, the Brazilian one, who states that, against the Nazi claim that an alleged racial superiority gives the right to rule the world, Bretton Woods offers a way of governance through human brotherhood. It is not racial superiority that gives the right to rule the world, but the ability to come together to decide on a better future. And this is the second to last speech. The last one will be from a Norwegian. Kilau, the Norwegian, states, "The disaster of 1918 happened because politicians only promoted national interests. If we had failed here, my friend Keynes would have written a second brilliant volume, The Economic Consequences of the Peace." Because, yes, the representatives at Bretton Woods had read Keynes' book, written 25 years earlier, where he listed all the mistakes made during the Versailles Peace of 1919. And they probably succeeded. They wrote something that, according to Keynes, is an excellent result. At this point, President Morgenthau shares an anecdote about the fighting spirit of the Norwegians. He says that during the Nazi invasion of Norway, he was at the Treasury Department, and he had received a strange call from a customs officer at the port of Baltimore. The customs officer said, "Minister, there's someone here. A fishing boat coming from Norway has 8 tons of gold. What should I do?" The minister replied, "Secure the gold, I'll be right there." This was to show just how combative the Norwegians were. Therefore, all that's left now is to inaugurate the 2 major new institutions, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Lord John Maynard Keynes will participate during the inauguration and say that surely, at this baptism, 3 well-known characters from the tale of Sleeping Beauty will be present, the 3 good fairies who bring gifts to the 2 children. The first gift is the Joseph's coat, says Keynes, which is a reference to the Old Testament, the Genesis. In Italian, we might call it Arlecchino's cloak or Arlecchino's costume, a multicolored outfit. This is meant to remind the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank that they work for all the countries of the world. All the flags and the colors are equally distributed on this multicolored cloak. And the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank must work for all countries in the same way. The second gift from the fairies will be a box of vitamins. These vitamins should make the 2 institutions strong, especially able to withstand political pressures. They should behave like economists and not follow the directions of politicians. Keynes' third suggestion for a possible gift from the good fairies is wisdom. Wisdom means being able to tell good projects from bad ones, knowing who to grant credit to and who not to. It takes a considerable amount of skill to do this job, and the two new institutions will need to have plenty of it. But what if an evil fairy showed up? According to Keynes, the curse of an evil fairy could be this: you two brats will become politicians. Everything you decide will be for someone else's purposes. So, for Keynes, this is the worst thing that could happen. The IMF and World Bank subjected to politics, making decisions driven by other motives and not by the economic purposes for which they were created. So, something was learned from the First World War, and we've reached a global balance that will last for a very long time, managing to achieve cooperation among 44 countries around the world, all different in traditions, languages, flag colors, and political inspiration. And yet, they were all able to come together and agree to create a world order that we are still living in today. Because the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund are still active. This initiative, which was undertaken in 1944 and still endures today, was the result of major mistakes. Mistakes that must never be repeated. And yet, we will experience turbulence within the system as well, which we will see in the next lesson.